So over the years, I've had a number of different favorite guitar solos come and go, but there's always been one that I keep coming back to. It's potentially the best solo I've ever heard, as to me, it's a textbook example of the idea of solo theory, doing everything a fantastic solo should, as well as being almost perfect. The solo is from the instrumental track Last of the Wilds by Nightwish, so let's check it out. Just a quick aside here, guys. I was going to watch a live video so that we could analyze what the guitarist Empu Verinen is doing, but unfortunately it seems like for the live gigs they play it very differently. So we're just going to take a look at the original album version, and I'm going to come in a little bit early to give you guys some context if you haven't heard it. And of course I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't, because the song is amazing. So the reason this solo is so significant to me is because it checks all the boxes of the idea of solo theory, which is the different concepts and approaches that you can take towards putting together a fantastic guitar solo. And in my opinion and my taste, it comes down to some of the following, which is taking an idea already in the track and building off of it, say something like the melody. Then developing that idea and continually creating interest and variance throughout with no passage or moment feeling sort of stale or kind of overstaying its welcome. Making it melodic and using a variety of different techniques throughout. And finally bringing something new to the track but always feeling like it's still a part of the whole, like contributing a new chapter to the overall story. And all of this solo does in spades, and I think that the results speak for themselves. But while this is my favorite solo, the one thing that I have never done is learn it. So I've broken it down into sections, and we're just going to go through section by section to analyze what makes it so good and really get to the core of why it stands out to me as much as it does, while I also try and get it under my fingers to hopefully be able to perform it for you guys at the end of this video. So let's get into it. Okay, so I've got a couple of different tabs and a few videos of guitar covers which we can use as reference as we go along, and in the beginning of section 1 we start by playing in unison with the melody. So there's a pinch harmonic on one of those first notes there. So we begin by playing in unison with the melody, but then we begin to deviate kind of about halfway through the second bar, but we don't deviate too much because we stay kind of harmonizing with the pipes that continue to play the melody underneath. So we're doing something a bit different. We're kind of announcing that, you know, it's the solo, but at the same time we're not introducing anything too new to the point where it sounds harsh, so it's quite a good beginning point. So section 2 begins after a pause at the end of section 1, which is a good example of phrasing because it means that when the guitar does come back in, we know that we're about to go somewhere different because it's a new idea. And this section is completely different to the melody. This is a totally new addition to the song from the solo as opposed to section 1. So the beginning of the section is quite simple. It just begins with this very simple idea, before moving into this scalic run, And in one of these covers, I saw that it's actually an example of tapping. And that's going to be interesting because tapping is something that I really haven't done much work on, so that's going to take some time. And moving into section 3, where at the end of section 2 we finished at the bottom end of that scalic run, here we kick into a higher register, and we start to introduce sort of bends and sustained notes. And this works really well in contrast to the busyness of the previous section. It's a nice change in dynamic and a nice change in pace. So the Nightwish guitarist really knows how to not oversaturate things. So moving on to section 4 and beginning to kind of close out and round off the solo, we return to playing in unison to the melody. That section there, and then also the harmonic on the that note there echoes back to the same at the beginning, so we're really kind of bookending the solo here. But we don't fully play with the melody to finish it off. We move on to this busier section here, and then that little kind of hammer off, pull off pattern there is kind of like a final flourish before the end of the solo. Because with the previous section being as slow and kind of simple as it was, if we just pushed on to finish the solo without this little moment, it might be a kind of somewhat underwhelming end to the solo. But this is just like a last little hurrah before we fall back in with the rest of the band, fall back in with the track, and kind of call this section to an end so that things can all move seamlessly onto the next section. Yeah, and then that last section is just that moment when everything comes together. The solo falls back into place with the band, everything all synchronizes, and then everything moves on seamlessly. Alright, so I'll spend a little bit more time working on that and kind of getting it under my fingers a bit more. Specifically that section at the end of section 2, the bit with the scalic run that I'm pretty sure is tapping. That's going to be quite interesting for me because I've never really looked at tapping as a technique. So that's going to take some time. But yeah, otherwise, let's just see how it turns out. And there it is, guys, the solo from Nightwish's Last of the Wilds, one of, if not my favorite solo of all time, and just a perfect textbook example of the concepts of solo theory. As always, I hope that there was something in this video that was useful for you, something you were able to learn from. If you have any thoughts or even any ideas for future solos or songs that you want me to look at, I'm definitely interested in doing more videos like this, so drop a comment below because I would genuinely love to hear from you. But otherwise, I'll just take this opportunity to say thanks for watching, thanks for doing all the usual business to help support my channel and my videos, and thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you guys in a bit.